The rain had stopped only a few minutes before Henry Wallace, a stern-faced millionaire known for his ruthless business decisions, stepped out of his black car and walked toward the cemetery. Every year on this day, he visited the grave of his son, Daniel, a soldier who never made it back home. Henry's life had been built on power, money, and influence, but none of it mattered when he stood in front of that white stone with Daniel's name carved into it. Today, though, something felt different. As he walked between the long lines of gravestones, he noticed a woman kneeling at a grave beside Daniel's. Her clothes were worn, her hair messy from the weather, and her hands trembled as she comforted two little boys clinging to her. The boys looked barely 6 or 7 years old, both with tear-stained cheeks and frightened eyes. Henry paused, watching as the woman wiped her face and whispered apologies to the grave. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't give you a better life. Please forgive me," she murmured. The boys hugged her small frame as if trying to keep her from falling apart. Henry felt annoyance rising inside him. Not because of her grief, he understood grief, but because she was sitting so close to his son's grave. Without thinking, he walked toward them and spoke sharply, "You shouldn't be here." The woman flinched as if struck. She quickly stood up, shielding her boys. I'm sorry, sir." "We'll move," she stuttered. Henry crossed his arms. "This area is for families. These graves are sacred. You don't just wander here whenever you feel like it." The woman's lip trembled. "We aren't wandering. My husband, he's buried right next to your son." Henry blinked. He glanced at the gravestone she had been crying over. It belonged to a man named Michael Turner, a soldier who had died the same month as Daniel. Henry stepped closer. "Your husband served with my son?" he asked. The woman nodded. "Yes, but I didn't know they were buried side by side." She tried to pull her children away, but one of the boys spoke up. "Mama, we didn't finish telling Daddy that we miss him." Something inside Henry loosened at the boy's words. The innocence. The grief. The raw honesty. He sighed and softened his tone. "You can finish," he said awkwardly. The boys knelt down and whispered their messages to the stone while the mother looked at Henry with surprise and caution. He noticed the bruises on her wrist, the frayed edges of her sleeves, the exhaustion in her eyes. Something wasn't right. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied quietly. "Lily Turner. My husband died 2 years ago. Since then, things have been very hard." Henry waited, sensing there was more. Lily took a shaky breath. "Michael was our only support. After he died, I lost my job because I couldn't leave the children alone. We've been living in a shelter for the past few months. I only bring them here when I can afford the bus fare." Henry felt a sting in his chest. He had spent millions on new cars, business expansions, and charity banquets, but hearing that a soldier's family was living in a shelter made him feel ashamed. Daniel would have been furious. His son always believed in helping others, especially families of fallen soldiers. Henry cleared his throat. "You said you didn't know they were buried together." Lily nodded. "I didn't. But now, it feels like they're still watching over each other." Her voice cracked, and she quickly covered her mouth to hide her tears. Henry stared at Daniel's grave, imagining his son standing there, arms crossed, giving him that disappointed look he used to give him whenever Henry let pride get in the way. Henry sighed heavily. "Listen, you don't have to rush off. Take your time." Lily blinked at him in confusion. "Really?" "Yes," he said. Then after a pause, "Do your boys have warm clothes? You mentioned a shelter." Lily hesitated, her fingers tightening around her son's shoulders. "No, they don't. Winter has been difficult." Henry felt the weight of her words, each one pressing against his heart. Daniel had always said his father forgot what real people went through, people who didn't live behind mansion walls. And now, standing beside his grave, Henry felt Daniel's silent reminder. He stepped closer and knelt down slightly so he was eye level with the boys. "Do you want to tell me about your father?" The boys nodded shyly and began talking about Michael, how he used to carry them on his shoulders, how he taught them to whistle, how he promised he'd come home. Henry listened patiently, his expression softening with every word. Lily watched, stunned. She had expected anger from the millionaire, not kindness. After the boys finished, Henry stood up and took a deep breath. "Lily, what would you say if I offered to help?" She froze. "Help?" "Yes. A home. Clothes. School for your boys. A job, if you want one." Tears immediately filled Lily's eyes. Why would you do that for us?" Henry looked at his son's grave. "Because if Daniel were here, he'd tell me I should. He always believed in helping families who sacrificed everything." Lily covered her face and broke down crying, and Henry, unsure how to comfort her, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "I promise you that." As they left the cemetery together, the boys holding each of Henry's hands, Lily whispered, "You changed our lives today." Henry shook his head. "No, you reminded me how to live." And while driving them away from the cemetery, he glanced at Daniel's picture on the dashboard and whispered, "Thank you, son." If you enjoyed this emotional story and want more powerful life-changing videos, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more inspiring stories every week.